I was a nurse for over 22 years in the field of psychiatry.
A supervisor said, "Oh, you're on the ECT rotation next week." And I said, "Oh, well, what do I do?"
The idea is that the shock will subdue the unwanted emotions. In fact, all it ended up with was brain damage.
I underwent electroshock therapy from the ages of 14 to 16.
And I can remember saying, "Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?"
If this is a hospital, why are you locking the doors?
This is about making money at the expense of vulnerable people in our society.
It's one of the most barbaric treatments that the world has ever known.
I don't remember anything anymore. It's too late.
If I ask you what is ECT or electroconvulsive therapy, what do you say?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I have no clue.
I don't know.
I don't know the acronym, but I'm assuming you're talking about like electroshock therapy.
I think I've seen it in movies.
It's a pretty bad reputation, and it's generally frowned upon nowadays.
Outdated. I don't think they really use that anymore.
It is considered an antiquated technique.
Barbaric.
Brutal.
Some say it was extremely traumatizing.
Did you know they're still doing electroshock?
I really did not know that this was actually still happening.
Oh, they're still doing it? Why?
Can't believe that it's still allowed.
I thought it was against the law.
精神医学による非人道的行為の中でも最も残酷で野蛮なのは電気けいれん療法です。
People often ask, what is electroshock? And what it is electrocution. That's all it is. They don't call it electrocution. They call it electroconvulsive therapy because it has a magic three-letter acronym, ECT. And the one thing it isn't is therapy.
ECT involves applying electrodes to a patient's scalp and then passing an electrical current through the skull and the brain tissue in order to induce a seizure.
精神科医たちは痙攣発作を意図的に起こすために 460V の未加工の電気を頭蓋骨に流し込みます。その発作は30分も続くこともあります。
It is ultimately imparting large amounts of electricity, many times the voltage you would get even if you stuck your finger into a light socket.
実際 ECT は十分すぎる電力を使用します。それは2台のエレベーターの稼働、船舶クレーンの運転、または5つのスタジアムの照明電力に相当します。
This is an electroconvulsive therapy machine, also called a shock machine. The purpose of this instrument is to run an electric current through the head of a patient. These are the two electrodes. The machine applies a voltage to these two electrodes, and that causes a current to flow through the patient's brain, and that constitutes the treatment. So if we set this dial to 100%, then this instrument is set to pass 3 billion electrons through the patient's head during one treatment.
ECT の機械はスタンガンのおよそ430倍の電気出力を生み出します。この機械自体は非常に基本的です。電気をコンデンサーに引き入れ、エネルギー貯蔵装置は機械が壁のコンセントが提供する4倍以上を保持するようにします。精神科医たちはボタンを押すだけでこの大量の高電圧を直接頭蓋骨へと打ち込むのです。それに対して脳は極めて繊細な器官です。およそ1000億もの神経細胞で構成されます。これは 体をコントロールするために数えきれないほどの信号を解釈し中継します。その数は毎秒5兆を超えます。脳は10分の2未満の電圧で機能します。これは腕時計の電池の8分の1以下です。脳への1回のショック療法で放たれる電圧と比べると、脳が機能するために用いる電気の2300倍に相当します。それはプロボクサーに顔を殴られる力に相当します。
And the outcome of that is it destroys brain cells. And the more brain cells you destroy, in theory, the better it is for the person. The biggest mystery of all is why on earth people think that putting bolts of electricity through people's heads is a good idea.
精神科医たちが患者にショックを与えるのは治癒的な痙攣発作というものを引き起こすためです。でもそんなものは存在しません。
When we're in emergency departments and someone comes in with a seizure, that is a bona fide emergency, and we hop right to and try to stop the seizure immediately and its side effects and the things that it causes.
痙攣発作は突然電気が脳に放出されることで振る舞いや感覚、あるいは意識の変更を引き起こします。痙攣発作は転換のような医学的症状、または外部の力による結果の可能性があります。
There are seizures that are fever-induced, or if it's alcohol withdrawn, or if it is caused by hallucinogens or by cocaine or methamphetamine, those things when the patient stops using them, they improve.
しかし ECT では精神科医は最も深刻な形で痙攣発作を生み出すのです。これを痙攣大発作と言います。これは脳全体に異常なほどの電気的な活動を送り込むことで引き起こされます。
Okay, grand mal seizure is when you go unconscious and have a lot of spasmodic muscular contractions which can hurt you, and you lose control of your bladder and bowels.
They could stop breathing, they could bite their tongue, arch their back to such an extent as to cause a fracture of the spine. It's just a complete disorganization of neurologic function where a person has no control over their body.
The more seizures a person has, the more potential there is for cognitive decline, different neurologic dysfunctions, and more seizures.
Having recurrent seizures potentially reduces the lifespan of that individual. It has an impact on mortality.
毎年4万5千人のアメリカ人が痙攣発作によって亡くなっており、それは交通事故の死亡者数に匹敵します。
You know, mainstream physicians go to great lengths to prevent seizures. Epilepsy, seizure disorder, is a medical problem that we give medication for in order to prevent any seizures, not just some seizures. The idea is to prevent seizures, to prevent brain damage, because it's recognized that seizure activity promotes brain damage.
しかし、これがショック療法医の治療効果のあると主張するものです。ですから、彼らは大痙攣発作を故意に引き起こすのです。
I became part of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is an international watchdog investigating psychiatric abuses, because I've had shock treatment. I know the damage that it caused. I know what damage it did, not just to me, but to my family who had to get me through that. You know, when I was very young, I felt depressed, but what I didn't know is that I actually had an underactive thyroid. I was sent to a psychiatrist by my GP, and he said, well, you need shock treatment. The shock is like a grenade going off in the body. The violence of this, it's like every nerve and every cell is being electrified and with such force. And you come out of it and you know that body is never going to be the same again. When I woke up, I was so disjointed. I didn't know where I was. I was in an incredible amount of pain. And I looked at this person standing next to my bed, and I didn't know who it was. I said, well, who are you? And she said, I'm your mother. Electroshock is torture being passed off as therapy. It is a betrayal.
一体どうして 精神科医にはこの野蛮な治療が許されるのでしょう。彼らの歴史にはそれらが散乱しています。1920年代、精神科医マンフレート・サケルは悪質な脳細胞を殺すことで精神病患者の治療に成功したと主張しました。しかし現実はというと、インシュリンを使って脳に損傷を与える発作を引き起こし、それにより患者全体の 5% が死亡、その他を知能障害者へと変えたのです。ハンガリー人の神経精神科医ラディスラス・メデューナはメトラゾールという強力な薬物を用いて脳に損傷を与える発作を引き起こすことで精神病を取り除けると主張しました。でもそれは大失敗でした。
Since its inception, psychiatry has really had 4 modalities of treatment that they recircle over and over again. Cut it, burn it, drug it, shock it to the human mind. So when one of their treatments fails, they use it to promote the next one.
メトラゾールによる損傷に引き続き、精神科医は最新の奇跡の治療として前頭葉白質切断術へ飛び移りました。精神科医たちはアイスピックを使って患者の脳をズタズタにし、何万人もの植物人間を作り出しました。それは激しい反対勢力が精神科医たちにこの怪物のような手順を放棄させるまで続きました。一方で彼らは電気という新しく画期的なものへとすでに移っていたのです。
Ugo Streletti wrote in his own documents that he was inspired to develop electroshock by his observation of pigs being led to slaughter. And he saw that the effect of shock on these pigs was to make them more docile and controllable, and it made them not even fight for their own survival.
その後2年間、チェルレッティは電気ショックの実験をさまざまな動物に対して行いました。
Streletti progressed to taking homeless people off the street and subjecting them to electric shock.
チェルレッティ自身によると、最初の人間による犠牲者はホームレスで、二度と電気ショックを受けたくないと彼に頼んだそうです。チェルレッティの同僚である精神科医のロタール・カリノフスキーがその初めて行われた手順での恐怖を目撃したと彼の妻は思い起こしています。
He came home for lunch, as white as a sheet, and said, "Today I saw something terrible." And he described the first electric shock treatment, and he ended with, "I never want to see this again."
精神科医が電気ショックを用いて起こしている明らかな損傷にもかかわらず、彼らはすぐにこの金儲けの手順をヨーロッパ、そして合衆国へと広めたのです。1940年代までには電気ショックは広範に使われるようになりました。しかも最も残酷な形で。
The original idea was that you would invoke a convulsion. And of course, by definition, if you're having a convulsion, your body is jerking. The problem was that people's bodies were jerking so much, they were breaking their shoulders, they were breaking their necks, bones were being broken.
しかし、それで精神科医が一般市民に対するこの残酷な手順の販売方法をやめることはありませんでした。
Many patients have been returned to their homes and jobs who might still be here if it were not for this helpful form of treatment.
ECT has been around since I was a medical student, and I graduated from medical school 60 years ago this year. I considered it as a medical student, having observed a few of them. I guess the kindest thing I could say is barbarian. I thought it was truly one of the most obnoxious things I'd ever seen done to a human being. A huge percentage of these people have brain damage.
1950年代までには電気ショックによる脳の損傷の数は無視できないほどになりました。そこで精神科医たちはその状況を有利に変えたのです。
Experts like Walter Freeman would say that the reason that ECT works is because it causes brain damage.
Maybe it will be shown that a mentally ill patient can think more clearly and more constructively with less brain in actual operation.
そしてそれが機能する脳が少ないという掲げられたゴールでした。
In the 1940s and the 1950s, it was very open in the medical literature that the way electroshock, quote, worked was by brain damage. And yet they went on to say that this was somehow going to end up being beneficial for the patient, when all it really ended up with was brain damage.
このマーケティングへの視点は1975年に唐突に変わりました。映画 各校の巣の上でその残忍さが暴かれた時にです。
The movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest forever changed the course of the public's perception of electroshock therapy because it was so accurately portrayed in the film. It was so obviously torture.
電気ショックがついに国民の詮索にさらされたため、ニュース機関がその犠牲者の資料を作り始めました。
Just like it's true that you can chemically control someone, yes, you can electrically shock someone out of their so-called crazy mind, but you don't shock them back into their right mind. You shock them into a shocked mind.
合衆国で電気ショックの創始者と認められている人でさえ、その損害を認めました。
The principal complications of ECT are death, brain damage, memory impairment, and spontaneous seizures.
Gonna do another one, Paul?
I think so. Geez, these are short seizures.
市民の怒りを前にして精神科医たちは新たな奇跡の治療、抗精神薬を考え出しました。しかしこれらも効果がなく危険で科学的ロボトミーになることが証明されました。精神科医は電気ショックをリサイクルし見栄えよく作り直すという答えに行き着きました。
Electroshock was so abhorrent to the American public that psychiatry came up with a PR campaign to change its name to electroconvulsive therapy. But it is not therapy. It has never been therapy.
悪いイメージを覆い隠すためにショックを使う医師は患者の痙攣による身もだえを抑えるために麻酔や麻痺させる薬を加えました。彼らは ECT を現代風として売り出し、今日でも行っています。
Well, electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT today, is nothing like what you've seen in the movies. It's a modern medical procedure.
Modern ECT is a lot better than old-fashioned ECT.
It doesn't look at all barbaric now.
しかし、セールストークに隠されていますが、電気ショックはあらゆる点で常にそうであったように残酷なものです。結果も同様です。痙攣大発作に脳の損傷です。変わったのはマーケティングだけでした。
I was a psychiatric nurse for 22 years, and I worked at a facility that did ECTs on adults. I became a whistleblower because I saw things that were being done to patients that were wrong, were unlawful, unethical. We used to tell our patients who would go in for ECT, things are not the same as they used to be back in the 1950s. And at the consultation, we would give out these videos called Shock. And our overall pitch to patients was, we don't know how it works. We just know that it does. We would compare it to rebooting a computer. The patients were led to believe this was somehow or another a miracle. And it wasn't a miracle. I didn't see any miracles, and I was in the business.
ECT の機械が行うことはいつも脳の損傷を作り出すことです。
Here we have two electroconvulsive therapy machines. This one is from the 1940s, and this one is a much more modern machine from the 2000s. They both have the same potential to do damage to the brain by running large amounts of electricity through the brain cells with the risk that cells will be damaged or killed.
しかし ECT のプロモーション用ビデオで取り上げられた精神科医たちは全く正反対のことを謳っています。
ECT is the gold standard treatment for that type of depression. It's a small amount of current. It's nothing like what's in the outlet at home, okay?
これは典型的で広くプロモートされた嘘です。 ECT の機械とは違って自宅のコンセントは人にショックを与えるようには作られていません。合衆国では安全ヒューズが取り付けられており、1000分の6アンペアに達すると電流を遮断するようになっています。アンペアとは電流の強さを示す単位です。 しかし現代的な ECT の機械は1000分の800から1000分の900アンペアを放出し、感電を防ぐために設定されている法的制限の150倍になります。それほどの電流が ECT 患者の頭を通り抜けるのです。
I was only 24 years old, and I didn't have anything except what you call the baby blues. My hormones were completely messed up after having a child. My husband was told that the best way to handle this was take me to a psychiatrist. And the next thing I know, they have me in a hospital, and they shocked me. And you would just wake up not knowing where you are or how you got there. And they would send me back, and they would just continue to do this over and over and over and over again. You just got shocked whether you wanted to be shocked or not. They just have to keep hitting your head with that hammer. They gave me 28 shock treatments. They took my soul, my mind, my intellect, my emotions. They put electricity to it. They ran it through my head and literally raped my soul.
ECT の現代版は単なる電気以上に危険性を備えています。
The drug they use as a relaxant in the US before you receive electroshock is also the drug they use for lethal injections.
この薬物はサクシニルコリンと呼ばれます。それは心臓以外の体のすべての筋肉を麻痺させます。呼吸を止めるその有効性により、死刑囚の刑実行の際に定期的に使われる薬です。精神科医たちは電気けいれん療法のためにそれを使います。
The same drug that's used to kill the person in the execution by paralyzing his breathing also paralyzes his breathing during the shock treatment, which is why the anesthesiologist actually has to ventilate the patient during the procedure. Same drug, same effect.
Modern electroshock is being given under sterile conditions in a regular operating room, looking very much like a regular medical operation, and it's all much more acceptable to anybody who would observe it. In fact, the literature shows that electroshock given under general anesthesia may even be more brain damaging than electroshock as it was given before.
理由は麻酔薬と麻痺させる薬は実際には発作の始まる地点を押し上げ、発作を引き起こすためにより強い電流への増幅を必要とするからです。患者が ECT の処置を受ければ受けるほど発作の始まる地点は高まってしまいます。ですから治療を与えるごとに精神科医たちは電気の量を上げるのです。これにより脳の損傷が起こります。患者が鎮静状態にあるかないかにかかわらず。
When you give a shock treatment and you give the anesthesia, it does nothing to protect their brain. So you can only protect their body while you're destroying their mind.
It's like this. If you are awake and get hit with a baseball bat, it's obvious that we would feel a lot of pain. But if you're unconscious and get hit with a baseball bat, your body goes through that same trauma. So why are we acting as if in our society that the body doesn't go through trauma just because somebody's conscious or not conscious?
初期の頃の電気ショック療法医は 80V の電流を使っており、今日の ECT の機械が消費するものと比べたら少量のものでした。実際、機械を製造するあるメーカーでは、痙攣発作を起こすのに必要な電気量の6倍まで電圧を増加させることを精神科医に勧めているのです。
We have here a Spectrum 4000 ECT machine, which is a modern device. It's connected to two resistors here, which is typical of the resistance that a patient's head would present to an ECT machine. I'm going to hit the treat button, and we'll be able to see if there's any temperature rise using the heat gun. I'll press the treat button. 112, 118, 120. So, we see that the current that the ECT machine forced through these resistors caused them to heat up from approximately 75 degrees to 120 degrees. The cells can get too hot, they can be damaged, or even die.
If you look at the MRI of their brain, they have areas that have disappeared. They're wasting away, just like somebody with Alzheimer's.
牛追い棒の450倍もの電流で打たれるわけですから結果は明らかです。しかし多くの人にとって受けた傷は身体的なものをはるかに上回ります。
Every time I look in the mirror, I try to wonder who I am. You know, just try to kind of put the pieces together of who I used to be. I was started an antidepressant, and then it was just multiple cocktails of drugs, of antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, sleeping medication, stimulants. And I just deemed treatment resistant. And then at 21, I was given electroshock. I went through a neurocognitive testing 6 months after, and I lost approximately about 50 points of IQ. My IQ is measured at 78, which I think that 75 is rendered mentally retarded. It's a constant identity crisis that I deal with. I do consider shock treatment torture because it damaged me physically and mentally in every way, and it's just continue. It's like every day I'm reliving the shock because I don't know who I am. They say that it's safe and effective, but I think I'm living proof that it's not.
精神科医は ECT は安全あるいは効果的だと主張する立場にはいません。なぜなら彼らの基本知識は著しく欠落しているからです。
Electrical engineers understand how electricity works, and biomedical engineers understand the effects that electric currents can have on human tissue. Psychiatrists, however, typically don't receive the kind of training to make them understand electricity, what it is, what it does, what it can do to the human body. So we have in this case an operator who is merely trained to set the knobs and push the buttons without understanding the ramifications of what he's doing.
法廷で電気系のトレーニングに関して尋問された電気ショック療法医がこの点を実証しています。
What is an amp?
What is an amp? You know, it's been a long time since high school physics, and I couldn't give you a scientific definition of what an amperage is.
Do you have a definition of a volt?
A volt. A volt might be the power at which an amperage is pushed through an electrical wire.
You're not quite sure what these terms mean, are you?
I'm not quite sure.
One of the settings that you put on your dials on your machine is hertz, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you know what the term hertz actually means?
I don't.
Do you tell your patients about your level of understanding of the resistance of the brain to the electricity you're sending through it?
No.
Do you think they might want to know before they lay their head down on the operating table to have you give them shock treatment?
No one's ever asked.
この証言以前にジョセフ・ジョンソン博士は1800人もの人々にショック療法を施していました。しかし電気に関する基本的な法則や用語に痛ましいほど無知なのはジョンソン博士だけではありません。学校での精神科のトレーニングのカリキュラムにはその主題についてはほんの少ししか含まれていません。しかも彼らはそのいわゆる治療がどう作用を示すかについて全く何も知りません。
Electroshock is as much art as science because how it works is still a mystery.
Do you know how it works, Jonathan?
I don't think anybody really knows how it works.
There's no specific answer to that question.
People don't understand
why this works or how it works.
How does it work? Well, as a field, we are focusing on researching that question.
We don't really know, is what you're saying.
We don't have the complete answers. However, it's not a complete cure.
この状態で精神科医がどうやって切り抜けているのかはもう一つのミステリーです。
A cardiologist, orthopedic surgeons, other physicians in other specialties really just couldn't get away with using tools of their trades with knowing so little about it as shock doctors do about what they're doing.
しかし、精神科医たちがこの手順を提供するときは常にそんな状態でやってのけているのです。
Psychiatrists will tell you that they don't know exactly how ECT works. But what they do know is that it causes brain damage, organ failure, it can kill someone, it can cause seizures. They do know that much. But they can't tell us how it actually works.
ショックを使う精神科医リチャード・エイブラムス、 ECT の機械メーカーソマティックの共同所有者は先生のもと自分の無知を認めました。
Do you have any understanding as to the mechanics of how ECT works?
I do not.
All right. Would you agree that that's the general state of the industry still today? That the practitioners of ECT don't have an understanding of how it works?
That's correct.
この人物、リチャード・エイブラムスが標準とされる ECT の教科書を書いたのです。ECT がどう作用するのか何も知らないと認めているこの同じ精神科医が科学的権威のように思われている教科書を書き、ECT の機械を製造し、世界中で販売しているのです。同時に ECT の実践者たちは工業用印刷機よりも高い電圧で被害者を強打する機械を使っています。
They see that as their job. Give the patient the drugs and they push the red button and zap him. But they don't study the underlying science because there isn't any.
My personal experience as a psychiatry resident was I was doing a rotation. All of a sudden my supervisor says, "Oh, you're on the rotation for ECT next week." And I said, "Oh, well, what do I do?" I've had no training, no instruction whatsoever. I arrive at the room, I walk in, there's the anesthetist, there's the nurse, there's the equipment, the patient's wheeled in, and now I have to set the settings on the machine. So I look at the log and I say, "Oh, well, the last time this person had a treatment, the settings were this and this." So I adjust the dials. Person gets treated. Next patient who comes in, it's their first course of ECT, the very first treatment. So there's nothing in the logbook. So then I go, I guess I'll just do halfway in between the last two patients. Set the dials, off we go. That's literally the experience I had. No supervision, no follow-up, nothing.
ベテランのショックを使う医師でさえ初めての患者にどのくらい電気を流せば痙攣発作を起こすか知らないのです。試行錯誤です。著名な ECT の精神科医チャールズ・ケルナーは全国放送のテレビ番組でその実例を示しています。
Preparing the sites for the electrodes for the delivery of the stimulus.
Okay.
Okay, treating. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Still didn't get it? Got it. Okay. Now she's having a seizure.
Half an hour after her seizure, Terry is in recovery.
Okay. Your treatment went really well. I want you to know that, okay?
The very next day, Terry is back.
Do you recognize me? No, I'm Dr. Kellner.
患者の脳に損傷を与えるショックを3回続けて与えることは暴行なだけではありません。ECT はそれを受けたすべての人に障害を与えます。ショックの最も熱烈な支援者の一人、心理学者ハロルド・サキムは宣誓した上でこう述べました。
Altered cognition is the most common side effect of ECT. That memory loss occurs, it's universal, and in some individuals it can be profound.
認知障害は軽い問題ではありません。それは 脳機能における最高の中枢部分が基本的に悪化するということです。感情の認識や自己洞察力、判断力と記憶力を統制する箇所です。記憶の喪失が ECT の犠牲者が最初に気づくことです。
It wasn't until I was at Shoal Creek that I saw a psychiatrist. And little did I know, after I signed myself in freely, that I couldn't leave for 72 hours. I wouldn't leave my room. I couldn't be around other people. I was terrified, and every time I went for another treatment of ECT, I got more and more paranoid. My head was exploding for days. I couldn't do anything but fall on the bed and sleep for 16 hours or something. I'd have to write everything down and then remember where I wrote it. My family would tell me, look at your book. Look at your book. I had to carry this book around with me all the time. My first service dog I got because if I left the apartment to go check the mail, I would get lost. I couldn't remember the number of the apartment. I'd just wander around. When I applied for disability, I had to go to the office and take some kind of test. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them where I lived. I couldn't tell them how to get to my house. I couldn't tell them the president. I couldn't tell them anything. And my older sister told me that they asked her, is she like this all the time? And she said, pretty much.
I spent 30 years working in the psychiatric system, principally as a clinical psychologist. And during that time, I saw numerous patients who'd received electroshock. I spoke with numerous psychiatrists who delivered electroshock. And it was really after that that I became kind of intrigued as to what was going on and why were these people delivering it. And more to the point, why did so many of my patients have long-term memory problems? There's a thing called anterograde amnesia, which is you lose your memory for everything after the shock, so you don't create new memories. And then there's retrograde amnesia, which is you lose memories for things immediately before the shock.
There's only been a few studies done in the last 33 years on permanent amnesia over the long term, 6 months or greater. And what they found, when they look for it, they find it. But they tend just not to look for it.
They knew about permanent memory loss a long time ago, and they actually instructed the field to say that it wasn't permanent, that it wasn't long-term, to use words such as transient, words such as spotty, words such as temporary, to minimize these adverse events.
しかし、診療所の外では精神科医たちは記憶喪失は ECT の目立つ特徴だと正直に告白しています。
Clearly, there are risks with ECT. That's been well established for a long time. Some people have regretted doing it because of memory impairment.
Memory loss occurs when patients get electroconvulsive therapy.
The amnesia problem with memory.
They have some memory problems that persist more than we'd like.
While someone's going through ECT, they have pretty profound memory loss.
Sometimes, they can impact the patient pretty severely.
It's like a little volcano inside the brain.
You get more bang for your buck with ECT. If you pardon the pun, you know.
しかし、ショックを使う精神科医はこのような率直な告白をめったに患者にすることはありません。
The industry has variously represented that ECT's benefits exceed its disadvantages. They don't deny that there are disadvantages to ECT, they minimize them. It's a sales pitch.
話すポイントをメディアの訓練を受けた精神科医に与えた PR 映像からの向上です。
ECT is the fastest and most effective treatment that we have.
It's the most effective treatment that we have today for severe depression.
Single most effective treatment we have for
is
depression.
The most effective really treatment. Effective for depression. It's
ECT
more effective
is
than
more
medication.
effective than antidepressant
More
effective than many of the psychotropic
ECT
medications.
remains number one.
More than medication, more than therapy, more than ketamine.
One of the most effective treatments for anything in medicine.
しかし、彼らのオウム返しは繰り返されるだけで科学ではありません。
Shock psychiatrists blame all kinds of adverse effects of ECT on the patient or their underlying mental condition. For example, memory loss or inability to make executive decisions are blamed on the person's underlying depression when it's actually an effect of the ECT.
頭部に損傷を与えることに加え、ECT は体中の損傷を引き起こし得ます。
That's why when you get ECT, there's a crash cart there in case the heart goes into an abnormal rhythm. And if that happens, the doctors have that there in order to bring the person back to life.
ECT によって生じたいくつもの事例にもかかわらず、精神科医はこれらのレポートを裏付けに乏しいと却下しています。彼らはまた ECT には何の価値もないことを示している自分たちの研究も無視しています。
Sham ECT is basically placebo control, where the person's wheeled into the room, they're put to sleep, electrodes are put on their head, buttons pushed, but there's no electricity. And so the patient doesn't know if they got real or sham. There's only 12 or 13 of those kind of studies ever. And when you pool them together, there is absolutely no evidence anywhere that people who've had ECT are better off 1 month later.
しかし、本物の ECT を受けた人々は頻繁にショック業界の単調な繰り返しに捉えられます。
Just like with psychiatric drugs and in the psych hospital, they keep coming back. We used to call them frequent flyers. They would be readmitted. We see the same patients coming in and out.
しかし、サラリザンビーのような精神科医は治療の失敗でなく、むしろ患者の再発のせいにします。
Without a maintenance treatment, you can have rapid relapse, but with maintenance treatment, you can have sustained relapse prevention.
Can I ask you, Dr. Listenby, what you think the minimum length of time is that is required to demonstrate an effect of the device?
Well, I guess I'm saying that I guess I'm trying to answer by analogy. ECT is an effective intervention without any form of relapse prevention. Patients will relapse very quickly.
精神科医たちが呼ぶ再発の事実はこうです。ECT によって引き起こされた脳の外傷は著しく、18キロのブロックを 2.3 メートルから頭に落とした時の力に匹敵します。この壊滅的な被害を癒すため、脳は化学物質を放出し、それが至福の感覚を引き起こすのです。でもこれは素早く消え、そしてその人の問題が戻ってきます。しばしば猛烈な激しさを伴います。そしてこれが起きた時、精神科医はさらに ECT を処方します。彼らはそれを ECT の維持、継続、あるいは増強と呼びます。
The nature of depression is that it is usually a relapsing illness.
Regular recurring ECT treatments may be needed.
Many people often go on to get what's called maintenance.
Ongoing maintenance therapy is provided.
And then you need another 10 ECT.
This is going to be a repeated pattern of these people are going to be on courses of treatment that will last for the rest of their lives.
And, you know, the average today is about 35 treatments of shock every year. And of course it doesn't work, it just makes them worse and it damages.
精神科医で ECT の機械メーカー、リチャード・エイブラムスとコンラッド・スワルスは FDA への書類の中でこの結果の欠如を認めています。急性期での ECT の処置を終了した数週間後、数ヶ月後に行われた評価では通常 ECT の大きな利点を示すことに失敗しますが、それは驚くことではありません。ECT は脳の損傷を引き起こし、体の機能を破壊するだけではありません。それは致命的なこともあります。
It can make people suicidal, either just contemplating suicide or actually going out and taking their lives.
The man who left an indelible impression on English literature is dead. Ernest Hemingway died of a self-inflicted wound at his Ketchum, Idaho home.
ノーベル賞受賞作家アーネスト・ヘミングウェイは一連の電気ショックを受けた後、間もなく自殺しました。彼は死ぬ前にこう述べています。どういった了見で私の脳をダメにし記憶を消したのだろう。 それは私の資本だった。どういう要件で私を失業させたのだろう。素晴らしい治療かもしれないが、それを受けた患者は破滅してしまった。
And we know that by doing ECT, the suicide rate, you're 13 times more likely to commit suicide if you do the ECT than if you had never done it.
I was bullied at school, being abused at home. So then, the doctor tells me, well, we want to try a new treatment with you. She's like, we call it ECT. I was 17 years old when I received ECT for the first time. Here I am, I'm a scrawny 110-pound kid, and you got these guys that are like ex-military UFC-looking fighters just grabbing me, throwing me in a room, and stabbing me with an injection, putting leather restraints on my arms. Then all I remember is waking up in my room. My head felt like it was on fire. It was like the worst headache I've ever had. And then I started panicking because I didn't know who I was. I don't remember my name. I don't remember anything. I don't remember what happened the day before. It was, I didn't remember anything at all. When I came back, I wasn't used to my home, my neighborhood, nothing. And the next 4 years I blinked. And it got to the point where I got fed up with it. So I took like half of my Prozac and I just, put it in my mouth, put myself like a self-induced coma. I remember I was just sitting in my bed all day cutting myself, trying drowning myself, hanging myself, thinking of ways I could end my life, putting a plastic bag around my head, tying it, and going under my blankets, just waiting to die already. Even to this day, I'm still suicidal. I mean, if you don't care about your memories or your life or anything like that, oh yeah, go ahead, do it. If you love pain, you love headaches and all that, yeah, go do it. But, if you want to remember your life, you want to remember your friends and all the good times, yeah, don't do it.
One of the dangers of ECT is death. That's known. It's actually reported in MedWatch reports in the FDA. You had a death that occurred to a patient just hours after they received ECT. So, does ECT cause death? Yes, it does.
Researchers at Brown University looked at the effect of ECT in the elderly. They looked at depressed elderly patients who were given ECT and compared them to depressed elderly patients who got usual medical treatment. And they found that the death rate after just 1 year among the ECT recipients was 27%, compared to an over 96% survival rate among the people who were treated without electric shock.
言い換えると、ECT を受けた高齢者は受けなかった人の6倍以上の率で死亡しています。
So one of the demonstrations I like to do with ECT is show the difference in the amount of electricity based on the age. So if a person is 20 years old and you do the electric shock, this is how long it is. If a person is 70 years old, this is the length. So the longer the electric shock is based on how old you are.
So 2/3 of the recipients of electroshock are women. Something like 3/4 of them are over the age of 60. I think the oldest person to receive electroshock was 104.
早期死亡は高齢者に限定されるものではありません。3000以上もの ECT 患者に対する調査で ECT を受けたあらゆる年齢層が原因に関係なく死亡率が増加しています。米国精神医学会さえ ECT が死亡させることを報告しています。とはいえ彼らは1万人の患者に1人だけと主張。ECT の機械を製造販売している精神科医リチャード・エイブラムスによって作られた推測です。実際の数はテキサス州は350人のうちの1人が ECT を受けた後2週間以内に死亡したと報告しています。それは合衆国の殺人率よりも50倍高く APA の主張の30倍です。 患者が ECT を拒否したとしても、世界のほとんどの場所で彼らはまだ安全ではありません。
So if a person determines, I don't want ECT, the psychiatrist can actually go to a judge who can determine that he's not competent to make his own medical decisions and override his own decision about what he wants done to himself and his body and actually deliver him electroconvulsive therapy against his will.
I was assigned to a psychiatrist who was very aggressive in his manner in trying to get me to agree to do ECT. You know, I was skeptical and I said, no, I don't want to do it. The psychiatrist pretty much threatened me. He said that if I don't agree to it, then they can get a court order. My family actually sided with me. They said that they shouldn't do this to me against my wishes. Basically, all the doctors said that I needed to have ECT and that I was not in my right mind to refuse. The probate court judge agreed with them and he issued the court order, and that was how they started the forced ECT on me. I was pretty much tortured. I was being forced to have this treatment. I didn't like it, I didn't want it, and when I was honest with the doctors about how it affected me and I told them, they just interpreted that as part of my depression. I realized that the only way to stop this was to start lying, so that's what I did. What was done to me was really, frankly, evil. It's a barbaric treatment, and that it shouldn't be done to people against their will like it was done to me.
With psychiatry, like most of their treatments, these are frequently given without consent of the patient because it is the only quote-unquote medical field where their authority supersedes your rights, an individual's rights to consent to treatment.
If it breaks their skin like an injection, or if it's a drug that you feed into them one way or another, or if it's electroshock therapy, that is violating a person's sovereignty over his own body. A person has a right to their own body. They have a right not to be violated.
国連の拷問に関する特別報告者は ECT の強制に対して非常に明確に非難しています。
Against your will, electroshock therapy is, in my opinion, absolutely prohibited. I have seen so many persons who have been subjected to electroshocks in order to extract a confession or information, etc. And it's one of the worst feelings of pain you can imagine if this electric current is really runs through your body. So it's the contractions. It might even lead to death. In my opinion, they are torture.
最も初期に使われた ECT のいくつかは文字通り拷問でした。ナチス時代の間にドイツの精神科医たちは彼らが生きるに値しないと考えた精神病患者に ECT の致命的な発作を行いました。1950年代アルジェリア戦争で精神科医は囚人たちに尋問する前に電気ショックを与えました。 CIA は調査のために電気ショックの機械を使用するようモロッコ治安当局をトレーニングしました。ソビエト連邦の精神科医は党の方針に従うことを拒んだ政治犯を電気ショックで罰しました。
In South Africa, ECT was used as a torturous method of treatment for a group that mental health considered to be animals, because they actually had the idea that if you were black, you couldn't feel pain.
One of the original ECT devices, which was actually manufactured in the UK, called the Page Russell, was used for torture in Arabic countries and was used on political prisoners. So how do you call something help or treatment when it's been used for torture?
精神科医はまた電気ショックをいわゆるマインドコントロールの分野で使用しました。
In a moment, we will examine the closest experimentation to brainwashing that we have uncovered.
悪名高い精神科医 イーウェン・キャメロンは薬物と極端な高電圧電気ショックを使って行われた実験を指導しており、人々を熟睡のような昏睡状態にし、幼児の状態に変えていました。
I thought this was the coldest and most impersonal treatment that anybody could give to anybody in the world.
キャメロンの治療の熱心な支持者はオーストラリアの精神科医ハリー・ベイリーでした。
Dr. Harry Bailey studied a treatment called deep sleep therapy, and it involved knocking a person unconscious with a cocktail of psychiatric drugs, usually barbiturates and sedative hypnotics. And while they were in that comatose state, they were given electroshock treatment, sometimes twice daily. The patients were dying. There were 48 deaths. Over 1,100 patients were subjected to this. They all had brain damage. They all had personality changes. They had blood clots. They were seriously damaged by this so-called treatment.
Tonight, why was deep sleep therapy ever allowed to happen at Chelmsford?
The analogy with the appalling medical experimentation by Nazi doctors is difficult to avoid.
Certainly the information that we gave to the Attorney General's Department showed clearly that very often patients were given electric shock treatment without their consent.
The question has remained ever since then, why hasn't the matter been satisfactorily resolved?
CCHR, along with the Chelmsford Victims Action Group, got local media. There were demonstrations on the steps of Parliament demanding a government inquiry into deep sleep treatment. And we worked with legislators and we agitated for reforms, and it actually produced some of the biggest reforms Australia's ever seen.
Good evening. There will be a royal commission into the controversial Chelmsford Hospital deep sleep treatment.
Let me tell you that this royal commission will get to the bottom of all of the abuses that have gone on in the system.
And it was through our investigations, through the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, working with patients and their families who had undergone this deep sleep treatment, we ended up having deep sleep treatment banned.
今日、精神科医たちは新しい人工区分を電気ショックの新しいターゲットにしています。現在、妊婦たちは電気ショックは彼女ら、そしてお腹の子供にとって安全だと言われているのです。
When a woman is pregnant, she shouldn't drink coffee, she's not supposed to smoke. There's a whole list of things that are bad for the baby when it's in the prenatal stage. However, pregnant women are getting electric shock, causing miscarriages.
It boggles the mind that something like this can be given to a woman who is growing a baby in her body, that of course the electricity is going to affect her and her unborn child.
ECT 精神科医の標的として子供が増加しています。
It's a horrible idea to give electroconvulsive therapy to children. We don't know what the long-term effects are, but it only makes sense that repeated seizures like that could cause cognitive difficulties, learning difficulties, and damage to the nervous system as it's developing.
If you're going to destroy an adult brain, just think what you could do with a child brain. You could do much more damage. Take away his whole future.
なぜ子供が ECT を受けるべきではないのかというとても優れた科学的な理由があります。
In a fully matured brain, there are between 60 and 90 billion nerve cells. And when they die, they are not replaced. But in children, the brain is still developing. So if a cell is killed in an adult, that is one less brain cell the person has to operate with. But if a cell is killed in a child, then not only does he lose that cell, but he loses all the other cells that cell would have created during the development of the brain. So ECT is more dangerous to children even than it is to adults.
Right now in the United States, through Freedom of Information Act, CCHR has uncovered the fact that 16 states are currently electroshocking children and adolescents, and 5 of those states are electroshocking children aged 0 to 5.
Psychiatrists give electroshock to children all over the world. In Australia, children as young as 4 receive electroshock. In Turkey, 9-year-old children receive it explicitly as a punishment.
I'm an ex-law enforcement officer. Much milder things can land people in jail than to send a child through that type of trauma. We have a society where a parent can't even spank a child, but psychiatrists can put 400 volts through the brain of a child.
Under the definition, it's abuse in no other way. You are inflicting harm to a child under the guise of treatment.
世界保健機関は強い差し止め命令を発行しました。未成年者に対する ECT 使用の必要性は何もない。したがってこれは法律制定を通して禁じられるべきである。にもかかわらず米国精神医学会の会長と経営最高責任者の両者はあらゆる年齢の子どもと青年に ECT を広く利用できるよう FDA のトップに正式に要請したのです。それは政府の監視のほとんどない最も無防備な人たちに向けたキャンペーンです。
One of the things that the marketing campaign does so brilliantly is to talk about electroshock as a treatment of last resort. That is what we call a lie. There are psychiatrists in the States who recommend electroshock for all sorts of things, including inscriptions like autism, ADHD, learning disability, and they recommend that that is the first treatment that people are given, not the last, not the end of the line.
今日合衆国では連邦規制が ECT による有害事象の報告をすべての機器の製造者に要請しています。しかし機械メーカーはめったに従いません。
So you have manufacturers that know about adverse events, that have logs of adverse events, that didn't report adverse events to the FDA. And the FDA has done very little to actually enforce those regulations.
そして彼らが報告を行うのに17年という長さがかかりました。これらはしばしばゾッとするようなものでした。心臓発作、緊張病、胎児は殺され、人の頭は火がついたようでした。そしてこれらはそのごく一部に過ぎません。
My husband Jose Topete had ECT. They told us what a great thing it was and how it was going to help our family and help Jose. Jose had 23 treatments of ECT, and during the ECT treatments, he did not get better at any time. In fact, he had a breakdown at one time after the first week of ECT. We didn't realize that his whole memory was gone until after ECT was over. And one of the just terrible times was we live in a rural area that has a pond, and we have lots of frogs and bullfrogs. Well, we heard the frogs making a lot of racket, and Jose said, "What's that noise?" And we said, "Oh, it's just the frogs." And he said, "What's a frog?" He doesn't know his parents. He doesn't know his siblings. He has no memory of our marriage, the birth of his children, taking care of his family, his job. He was a California state tax auditor. He had no memory of what California tax law was. Everything was wiped out of his mind. His children, me, he didn't know who we were. At first I thought, okay, we'll be able to just teach him who we are and make him love us again. And that didn't work like that. It's been a real heartbreak for all of us.
引き起こされたすべての損傷があっても ECT の機械は適切に統制されたことはありません。
What we have here is a basic electronic device. It generates pulses for the purpose of delivering an electric shock. There's nothing medical about it. It's just a pulse generator.
この ECT の機械はオンラインで購入されました。免許、経歴調査、いかなる質問もなし。ただクレジットカードのみです。
In 1976, the United States Food and Drug Administration was given authority by Congress to regulate devices such as these. This device, of course, was never tested by the FDA, because it's too old. This one was used starting in the 1940s. When the FDA gained control over these devices, they didn't start regulating ECT devices because they were already in use. Any device that was already being used did not need to be tested, as long as it's substantially equivalent to the devices that were used when the FDA took control.
The FDA allowed it to be grandfathered in, meaning it didn't require any proof of efficacy or clinical trials for safety and efficacy. They just let it stay on the market.
ですから今や精神科医たちはその両方を手にし、一方で彼らはショックマシンは1940年代のものと実質的に同じだと主張したのです。同時に彼らは ECT を現代的で新しく改善されたものとして売り出しました。明らかなごまかしです。しかし FDA は1979年に ECT の機械をクラス3装置として分類。それは高い危険性があり安全テストを行わなければならないことを意味します。FDA は製造業者にその安全性を証明するために3年の猶予を与えました。
So, if ECT wants to claim safety and effectiveness, they should be showing by clinical studies that it's safe and effective. They haven't. And it isn't because they can't afford to. There's plenty of their own consultants that work for big league universities that get plenty of funding to do it. They choose not to because ECT is not effective.
Has Somatics ever conducted any studies to determine whether any brain injury could be caused by ECT?
Somatics has never conducted any studies of any kind. We're not in the business of doing studies of traumatic brain injury. We sell thymotrons.
いかなる試験のチャンスをも避けるために精神科医は FDA に働きかけ、その機械をクラス2に分類し直そうとしました。そのカテゴリーに含まれる他のアイテムは注射器、コンタクトレンズ、そしてコンドームです。
There's nothing else in Class 2 that causes brain damage, cardiac standstill, stroke, brain hemorrhage, seizures. It's really ridiculous for them to even be considered as Class 2. The reason they want to put the ECT machine in Class 2 is because it wouldn't have to be tested for safety or effectiveness.
大衆の抗議により FDA は再分類の正当性を判断する聴聞会を予定しました。ECT 経験者は証言するためにワシントンに飛びました。
I argued with a psychiatrist and he dumped me in the locked ward and shocked me 5 times. I became violent. I tore my nails off, dragged him under the door. And he said after 5 times, he said, sometimes they don't help.
I had over 80 shock treatments. And yes, they called them maintenance treatments, but I don't remember my wedding day. I don't remember my husband putting a ring on my finger.
When I was given an IQ test a few months after the ECT and asked the population of the United States, I answered 1,000. When he asked me to guess again, I answered 2,000. I remember having no idea where to find the answer in my head.
諮問委員会の大部分は ECT の機械はクラス3にとどめ、安全検査を受けるべきであるということに同意しました。しかしジェフリー・シューレンと彼の同僚マルビナ・アイデルマンが代表する FDA は委員会の勧告を無視し ECT の機械をクラス2装置としてその使用を拡大したのです。
3,000 submissions were sent into the Food and Drug Administration talking about the destructiveness of electroshock. The FDA and the APA and other psychiatrists want to make ECT more broadly available, despite the fact that all these people are saying no, despite tens of thousands of people saying electroshock is damaging, that it can actually kill you, that it destroys their life.
I recently started ECT treatments, electroconvulsive therapy. I was supposed to have one today, but I went ahead and canceled it. Because I'm stupid now. Or I'm definitely not as smart as I used to be. spent a lot of time and money on education because I wanted to be smart. And I was smart. I don't remember anything anymore. Right now, this is my life. If it's not on this sheet, I'm not remembering it. When it came to ECT, it was out of sheer desperation. And I didn't research it. And I just trusted. And now that I'm where I am, I don't have the brain capacity to research it. It's too late.
精神科医と ECT の機械メーカーは自分たちが作り出している被害を十分に認識しています。それならどうして彼らはそれを続けているのでしょう。
We look at the cost of manufacturing one of these machines. It has 3 of these transformers. They might be $40 a piece. And these parts probably could be collected for a total of about $50 or $60 for the components. The printed circuit board could probably be manufactured for less than $100 in quantity. All of these resistors are pennies a piece, and the integrated circuits are normally less than $1 a piece. So we see here a device that could be manufactured in quantity for between $500 and $1,000, including parts and labor.
ECT のシステムは2万ドル近くで売られ、その利潤は膨大です。加えて精神科医は ECT を支持し、かなりの利益を得ています。というのも、彼らはそこにいなければならないので、すべての電気ショックの処置の支払いを受けることになるからです。
It costs about $2,500 per session. So if you do the math, and let's just say for simple mathematics, the person has 10 sessions initially, that's $25,000.
入院費用はさらに利益となります。患者1人当たり12万ドルという高額な純益です。
We would start usually around 6 a.m. We would see up to 13 patients a day. It was almost like an assembly line mentality, kind of get them in, get them worked up, get the treatment, and get them out, get the next one in, get the treatment, do the recovery, get them out. It was a very lucrative business. Big money maker.
電気ショックを行う精神科医は行わない人の平均2倍儲けていました。そして彼らは週に数時間働くだけでこの収入を得ることができます。
It's been calculated that in America, psychiatrists doing a relatively small amount of electroshock, possibly 20 sessions a week, will earn anything up to an additional $300,000 per year.
そして年間10万人のアメリカ人が ECT を与えられ、精神科医たちは合衆国だけで54億ドルのショック帝国を作り出しているのです。地球上の半分以上の国の国家予算よりも高額です。
It has nothing to do with medicine. It has nothing to do with helping the patients. It's just a money machine.
それほど高額のお金が作られ、ショック産業では利害の衝突が頻発しています。これらの衝突の顔は心理学者で熱心な ECT プロモーターハロルド・サキムです。
Has any manufacturer of ECT devices ever given you money?
I've received reimbursements in honoraria.
How much money have you received?
$10,000, maybe $15,000, $20,000, $20,000, $25,000, $70,000.
加えてサキムは少なくとも ECT 調査費として900万ドルの政府助成金を受け取っています。 利害の衝突は米国国立精神衛生研究所 NIMH へと戻っていきます。そこの ECT 調査課長はその助成金を監督する精神科医マシュー・ルードルファーです。ルードルファーは何年間もハロルド・サキムの収容施設の暴利を貪るだけでなく ECT の教科書の一つの章を共同で書いています。 NIMH のサラ・リザンビーもいます。彼女は10の精神医療機器メーカーと金銭的なつながりを持っています。彼女の指導者はハロルド・サキムでした。そして米国精神医学会のリチャード・ワイナーがいます。ワイナーは APA 特別委員会の主任精神科医でした。彼らは APA の ECT 同意書から脳の損傷に関する箇所を外すことを推奨しました。こう言ってです。脳損傷は潜在的危険性に含まれる必要はない。ワイナーもまたアメリカの2つのトップ ECT の機械メーカーのコンサルタントです。メクタとソマティック。ソマティックはショック精神科医リチャード・エイブラムスとコンラッド・スワルツの会社で ECT システムに2万ドルの価格をつけています。リチャード・ワイナーの APA 特別委員会の ECT に関する報告はエイブラムスの記事を60回以上引用しました。このもつれ合った堕落のクモの巣の鍵となる人物全員が ECT ジャーナルの編集委員です。エイブラムス、シュウォーツ、リザンビー、ワイナー、サキム、ルードルファー、ケルナー、そしてフィンク。
When you invite the foxes to watch the hen house and act like you're really guarding the place, well, it's really just a violation of public trust.
人々の人生が破壊されています。
I had problems before I had shock treatments, and I would say I have more problems now.
I didn't receive any help from the ECT that the psychiatrist gave me. It destroys you. Shock treatment felt like torture to me. I say it's like torture. It felt like it destroyed my spirit.
It beat all the abuse I even experienced. It beat the rapings, the molestations. It beat everything because it did so much to me psychologically and physically.
Prior to ECT, I never thought about suicide. After the second round of ECT, I definitely was considering it.
ECT stands for electroconvulsive torture. Because obviously, it didn't help my sister at all.
Psychiatry destroyed my father because it destroyed his purpose, and he committed suicide in the end.
Is it the responsibility of the psychiatrist performing ECT to make sure that no harm comes to his patient?
The answer to that is no.
1時間以内に精神科医は1000回以上のショックを行っています。犠牲者は世界中で年間合計100万人です。電気ショック療法医は ECT に対する制約を取り除くのに一生懸命に取り組んでおり、誰も安全ではありません。
It's unconscionable, some of the things that I've seen, particularly as it pertains to very small children.
The way they've treated people is just unbelievable. I couldn't see treating my worst enemy that way.
Oh my God, I don't want that to happen to anybody. It brings tears to my eyes. It's frightening.
Just common sense will tell you that you don't need to put that electricity to their brain. I'm adamantly opposed.
ECT への解決策はたった一つです。治療はまさに感電です。
It's a complete travesty as a civilized society to do these type of torturous, barbaric procedures.
ECT has to be stopped. We cannot continue to do this to people. We have safe and effective treatments that are out there. We do not need ECT.
It's just cruel and inhumane to be able to send people through that type of torture.
We're standing up and saying that this experimental dosing with ECT cannot occur anymore.
It's just assault and battery.
It's more torture than it is a medical treatment. It should be illegal.
ECT should be banned.
ECT should have been banned 50 years ago. The sooner the better.
それは可能です。ECT はすでに 世界中のいくつかの国や州で部分的または完全に禁止されています。
We got rid of the lobotomy because it was such an abhorrent image and it was so obviously a form of torture and assault. Electroshock is equally a form of torture and assault. We just haven't gotten rid of it yet. And we need to take action and require the FDA to ban this device, which has never been proven safe or effective.
This is an atrocity that should never have got as far as it has. It's just a mass experimentation, and the FDA does nothing. They need to be held accountable.
ECT は拷問で野蛮な人権侵害であるとさらされる必要があります。私たちの未来はそれにかかっています。市民の人権擁護の会に参加してください。電気ショックは非人道的犯罪だと声を上げるために、あなたやあなたの知っている人がショック療法による被害を受けたことがあるなら、もしくはそういった被害に対して手を打ちたいと考えるなら、行動を起こし声を上げましょう。 CCHR に連絡してください。